This is John Jackson Miller, writer of Star Wars comics and novels, and you're listening to Star Wars with Stevie B. May the Force be with you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another show. I got Noah here from Quality Autism. I figured I'd bring him back because the first time we talked was about this baby here, the Ultimate Chronology, post Return of the Jedi. I highly suggest you get it. It's awesome. You did a great job. So I wanted to bring him back and talk about the new, or should I say the new old chronology, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, Noah.
The next one.
Yeah. How you doing, buddy? How's things going?
Everything is going fine as of right now.
Okay. I kind of heard you had some PC problems going
Exactly.
on. How's that? How you doing? Everything good?
Now everything is good. But basically the problem was, for some reason, somehow I got a virus. I still don't know how. I just know it appeared in like the files for like Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga, which is bizarre. But essentially I couldn't work for like about a week. And I got it fixed just yesterday. PC got repaired, everything fine. I got all my important data, saved, for example, on a USB stick.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so everything seems to be working fine. Also,
Good.
what I did, because I also write on my PC and I couldn't write for like a week. Good news is I didn't have much work like left to finish with the chronology. I will get to it.
Okay.
But the little bit I had to do, I used like an old-fashioned notebook
Look at that.
and wrote a little bit in it, which is
That's pretty good.
it's essentially just some important dates and stuff. But yeah, that was pretty nice. Finally had a chance to use it.
Yeah. The old method, if you will. Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you like pencil notes? Now that you just real quick, do you pencil notes as you're reading and going back through information, or do you just type it all?
A mix of both. I would say I do type a lot of it, but also like here, for example, yeah, I write stuff down.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, me too. It's kind of a habit. Becomes a habit after a little while.
Mhm.
So now do you have a virus protection on there? You got that? Are you set just in case? Okay. And that's crazy
I'm safe.
from Lego Star Wars, hey?
Yeah, somehow I maybe not from the game itself because I had it for like 1 or 2 years, but the virus suddenly appeared in the files for it.
That's
It's just,
crazy.
just bizarre.
Yeah, that's So let's get onto the new old chronology. I'm excited about this one. I know when we talked the first time I mentioned that because I just love this era because I'm not too familiar with it. Like I'm slowly collecting the comics and such and everything, reading the novels obviously. But where did you actually start with this one? Like where the timeline here?
The timeline as of right now, I started about 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. So very far into the past, and essentially writing down basically information that we only have from like source books and articles and stuff. Because the first story obviously is like Dawn of the Jedi era, which is 27,000 years before, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's essentially what I have done.
Okay, so you just kind of got some of the information from what you could. Now, do
Mhm.
you have like do you have a lot of the comics and the books of kind of
Oh,
like, yeah. What?
yeah. I mean, I do own all of them,
Oh,
obviously.
okay.
Yeah, and I will say stuff like Dawn of the Jedi and Tales of the Jedi. That was easy to write and it was very fun. The problems began with the stuff that's not in print, the
Mm,
video games.
yeah. And I'm not too familiar with them either. Like I was a video gamer, but like I was more of a Final Fantasy, Diablo kind of game. Call of Duty a little bit was coming out around the time. So I never really played SWTOR much. And from my understanding, you haven't really dabbled with it much as well, hey?
Nope, not even with the two KOTOR games.
Mm. So now after doing this and kind of going back and reading, do you plan to play it?
No,
Yeah.
definitely not SWTOR.
Okay.
Maybe KOTOR,
Okay.
maybe Kotor. But what this made me realize, and since I only have like secondhand information, but SWTOR seems like a mess story-wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the stuff I researched, I was like, what is this? Like,
yeah, I was
crazy.
gonna get in that with you a little bit later because I want to hear your opinion on some things. So you started, the Dawn of the Jedi from which could, Tales of the Jedi. I recently gotten the Epic Collection Volume 2. I read that. So
yeah,
that was
I saw that you had a discussion with him.
Yeah. Yes, he's not very knowledgeable when it comes to that. He's like a pro. So a shout out to the revanchist. He's excellent. He's teaching me. So I really enjoyed that. That was my first experience with that. So I don't own the volume 1 or the beginning comics, so I don't know much about that. But did you enjoy going through some of this to add? Like, was there things that jumped back out at you? Like, this is going to be good to put down in the.
Oh yeah. Because I really like the Tales of the Jedi comics anyway. And what was interesting with this was inserting information from like into the Tales of the Jedi era that had come out later. For example, there is connections to it in the KOTOR comics, which obviously came out in like 2006, and from Clone Wars era video games, which take place during the Exar Kun story, like a super weapon he had found, and it was fun tying that in. There's one thing I have to go back and insert. I haven't actually written it down yet, but there was a character in the Freedom Net Uprising, I think. I don't exactly remember his name. The guy with like the armor.
Marco. No.
Warp Null or something like that.
Yeah, I'm terrible when it comes to remembering specific names.
Yeah, because I think he was like this cool looking guy in like this armor, and his armor reappears in a short story that came out post 2010.
Man.
And so I have to go back and insert that like he was a character and his armor was later found, because it's like a Dark Times era short story about a Jedi who survives Order 66 and he finds this armor. And yeah, so I have to go back and insert a little bit, this is gonna happen way later, and then I can maybe also write that down in the Dark Times chapter.
Man, it's just crazy to think that there's so many short stories out there.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and they connect and are important to a regard.
Yeah.
You have to consider them.
It blows my mind to think about that, and what would be really great is if somebody like got all them together and put them in like here's a collection box set of books or what have you, just, you know what I mean? Because it's hard.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was probably, you spent a lot of time trying to research this stuff, right? And then kind of figure out where exactly it would be. Like, I'm sure how they mentioned it, you weren't really sure where it fit in the timeline, I'm presuming, or no?
With the short stories, it was relatively easy, actually, especially with like the SWTOR short stories.
Okay.
Which are still coming out, and that's easy to track, like where they fit. So yeah, that wasn't really a problem. But yeah, I get what you mean about collecting them all.
Yeah.
And Bantam did it kind of with like Tales from the New Republic and Tales from the Empire.
Okay.
Those two are like best-ofs of the Star Wars Adventure Journal short stories. But they are in no like real order. And like not even like thematically, because Tales from the Empire, you would think that's all short stories about, the Rebellion era.
Yeah.
But there's a prequel to Dark Empire in there, which is obviously New Republic stories, so it doesn't make any sense how they separated them.
Yeah, it just, even the recent one here that's coming out soon, I believe, from Joe Bongiorno, that Supernatural Encounters book, like that was a, blood short. It's just crazy. Like, I want to just gobble it all up. But, and first I want to say I appreciate you very much taking the time to do this. In the method that you used in your first book, I don't want to say it's simple, because nothing that what you did there was simple. But like how it's explained in the outline of it is just perfect. It just makes it, here it is, cut and dry, bam. And I like that. So I appreciate how you did that. I just wanted to say that again. because yeah, sometimes like a guy like me that's just coming into this trying to, it's like I'm lost sometimes, you know. So I appreciate all you guys out there that take the time to really get into the brass tacks of things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, it is fun to go into a deep dive with the stuff, and you find stuff that connects. Like, here's a story set during the rebellion era, but it has information going back like hundreds or thousands of years. One example would be, and that's important because I finished like the Old Republic era, and I'm going into the prequel-ish era, which is like 900 years before, and then obviously throughout all the prequel films. And there is information about this era, what the Disney canon has made like the High Republic era,
Okay.
which in Legends doesn't have much content, but there are like events mentioned in the Galaxy of Fear YA books about like 100-year-long conflict against like a creature called SWTOR. And that's like such a bizarre little lore thing that most people don't even know about.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know, and I'm still trying to get my hands on all them Galaxy of Fear books because I heard they're really good. And I know you just did some reviews on them, but you do it in German, so I don't know.
Exactly.
Ah.
And I also got those self-printed.
Oh my goodness sakes, Noah. That's amazing.
Yeah. I can only recommend this series. Like, this was awesome.
Yeah. I only own one of I don't even know what one I have, but it's like, man, can you get them? Or is that something you did over there?
Well, that's something you can probably find the files somewhere if you know the right people in the community.
Got the connections, hey? Got the hookup for sure. So, was there any time so far, like we're up to the Tales of the Jedi, going into the Old Republic, was there anything that like kind of stood out to you? Like, oh yeah, like maybe changed your opinion on it?
You mean story-wise?
Yeah,
like for the
story-wise. Yeah, just story-wise, yeah.
Story-wise, I don't think so.
No, okay.
I'm trying to think of like an example, but I can't.
No, I just figured I'd give it a little window. Maybe there was something. I know you love Tales of the Jedi. A lot of people do. So now we're into the Old Republic portion of it.
Yeah, but with that's interesting. Like, there's basically two separate Old Republic eras.
Right.
Because you got Tales of the Jedi, which was the first stuff to come out, and then you have the KOTOR era, which goes into SWTOR, obviously. So
yeah,
and it really is a whole different beast. And I can just hope that the way I've written it all down, like in order of how it happens, that it like flows naturally.
Okay.
Because to me, while writing it, it came across a little bit, okay, Tales of the Jedi, it all perfectly fits. And then we get to the KOTOR comics, and it's like, still mostly fits. And then we definitely go into SWTOR, and it's like, oof.
Yeah. I don't know exactly. And sometimes it's confusing because it's like three different parts to one big picture in a sense. Okay. And I've tried that too. I was reading through the Old Republic books, and then all of a sudden I try to like look for more information on these characters. It's like, oh yeah, the video game. Well, here, if you go to this website and click on this link, there'll be like a how do you say that? A portion from the game, you know, and then that kind of ties in. It was kind of crazy, but I really enjoyed reading them so far. So when you were writing this, you said it was all over the place. Yeah. Did you take a lot more? Did you have to like kind of go back more? Be like, oh, let me check this over one more time to make sure.
Oh yeah. I had to, because I have no experience with the game at all.
Yeah.
I knew what the basic story was for KOTOR 1 and 2, kind of. So that was more simple. It was way harder with SWTOR because there is so much content, and just it is overwhelming with SWTOR because it's an MMO, and and I still have to go back and insert like a little things like it doesn't matter, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff still to insert there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that too, because I'm sure going forward from here, it was like, oh, I got to go back because now it's mentioned over here. This happened. That, you know,
Mhm.
was there any characters, like any characters in this series that you became a fan of?
Farron Shan, definitely, because I've become convinced that Farron Shan is the only good character in the entire SWTOR era. He has the best comic, the best novel, and the best short stories. And apparently, he's a big part of the game, at least from my research.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool. Is there any like scene or something that like kind of just from going through this like kind of jumps out at you when you think back to it, or like an arc, a certain arc?
An arc, I don't know if it's in a positive way, but this whole Zakul storyline, which is essentially like the Sith Emperor Vitiate returning as Emperor Valkorion. And
Yeah,
he has like this weird sentient droid ship army, and it's bizarre, I would say. I don't know if I like it or not, because from the way I researched it, it comes across like they took a RPG story that's completely separate from Star Wars and put it into Star Wars The Old Republic. It's kind of fascinating. And I don't know how well it works in the game, but just strange. That's all I'm gonna say
yeah.
about it.
Excuse me. When I was reading some of the novels and such, I wanted to actually start playing the game. You know, like you said, just to kind of get more of it. But like I just don't have the time to sit down because you know once you get involved in a game like that, you just want to keep playing. And
Yeah.
I just it's just kind of that's out of my wheelhouse now. You know. So did you your novels? I know sometimes I've watched you rate, which is an excellent video, where all the novels are. And I know some of these novels weren't too high up on your list. Did any after say if you reread them, did you kind of become to like them more rather than, or no, not so much?
With the novels.
Yeah, like
Specifically
Revan.
like
Yeah,
Revan.
yeah, Fatal Alliance.
Well, Revan, I understood more of it after knowing the complete story, obviously, since it's a sequel and a setup for the MMO. So my opinion of it got both better and worse because I understood what was happening more clearly. But at the same time, I wasn't that much of a fan of the story.
Yeah,
And I still love the book Annihilation. I think that's just a really fun spy story. And I think that works even for someone who has no idea about the games or anything.
yeah. I read that prior to going in and reading these that the game adds to it, but that story, I really love that story. That is a great story. It's
Yeah.
fun. You nailed it. It's a spy. It's a thriller. I mean, I just remember the opening, like kind of the first couple chapters when Theron Shan he just he gets in a fight with another like bounty hunter kind of guy, and they're just scrapping, like throwing fists, judo throwing. I'm like, that's cool, But the whole story obviously turns out we're not going to give no spoilers away, but I mean, it's a great story. It's
Yeah.
fun.
And what's also great, it's essentially a sequel to one of the Old Republic comics, The Lost Sons.
Really.
Yeah, it's I think Farron Shan, he was first introduced in that comic, Lost Sons, and then this was his second appearance, and then he became big in the game.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I had no
And
idea
that was fun because for my research, I reread the comic,
Okay.
and then right after I reread Annihilation, and it clicked so much, it was insane.
That's cool.
So that was also fun to write then.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I had no idea. And he is a pretty cool looking character. He's got the tattoo, and yeah, he's a pretty slick dude. Mr. Karpyshyn did a pretty good job writing that one. What about Deceived, like the Malgus and them guys? Like, how did you feel about them writing them? Is there any backstory stuff to them that we're not aware of?
Backstory, I didn't insert much of it, but he does have this short story, The Third Law, also written by no, The Third Lesson, also written by Paul S. Kemp, which goes a little bit into his backstory, which I think I have to mention like in 1 or 2 lines. I have to go back and insert something there, I think. What I found interesting with Deceived is the character in it, the female Jedi, Erin Lena. She returns in the SWTOR game and the tie-in short stories that were published. So that was fun, writing the chronology, and I'm like, okay, just gonna insert like not necessarily its own chapter, but like a paragraph about the events of the novel. And then I'm like, oh my god, researching it, the character from the novel, Lena, she appears again way later in the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's amazing.
That's cool. Yeah. See, I have no idea any of this. This is what makes me want to play the game, because I could be mistaken, but he let her go, right? Towards the end, like they fought, and then he let her go.
I think so.
It's something along the
I
lines
remember
of that.
she decided to not pursue him further, I think.
Yeah. And I really liked his relationship with, I can't think of the name, but his Malgus slave girl that
the Twilight.
Yeah, that he had feelings for. Like that was really interesting to me. Like you didn't really see that before, as far as I'm aware. That kind of a relationship. So that was really cool. Yeah, I love that whole line of books there. A lot of people I've seen, Fatal Alliance, that whole planet that they went to, was there any more of that? Because that was an interesting place.
Nope, sadly. No. That's self-contained. That's interesting with Fatal Alliance, because it was written, to my understanding, before much of the SWTOR stuff was really like, settled on, put together. And so much of the stuff is established in it, doesn't really play a factor in the game. Like, I think the main Jedi character in it, he's like of Quinlan Vos species.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's mentioned anywhere else, like in the game. Maybe in one of the short stories or stuff, or supplemental material, but not in the game itself, I think.
Okay.
So that was interesting. Because I just remember with Fatal Alliance, it's not like Deceived or Annihilation, where it directly ties into the plot. It's more of like, this is how the game is gonna feel, because he has like 12 characters, and all of them are supposed to represent different player classes. You could be Bounty Hunter, or Jedi Knight, or Republic Soldier, Sith Lord, whatever.
Really? Oh. How many pages are we looking at here, like, so far? Like, which section has been the biggest, hardest for you to write so far? Let me just ask you that first.
Hardest to write, very easy SWTOR. It's
okay.
Okay, the way I've separated it in essentially 4 different parts. We have Birth of the Jedi, which is like really ancient stuff, and Dawn of the Jedi. And then I have Emergence of the Sith, which is Golden Age of the Sith comic and Fall of the Sith Empire, essentially, and how the Sith were created and stuff. And a little bit of Vitiate backstory, which also takes place around this time. Then the third part is Legacy of the Sith, which is Tales of the Jedi, all of it. And then I have Galaxy at War, which is part 4, and that's KOTOR and SWTOR and New Sith Wars. So Knight Errant and Darth Bane is also in there. And that part, Galaxy at War, is like 59 chapters.
Oh.
That is definitely the longest. I think the only thing that's going to be longer may be the Clone Wars. But we shall see.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. That'll be a whole other topic when we get there. Yeah, 59 chapters?
Yeah.
It's just that, man. How was it?
What you have in there, like, just talking about the big stuff, because you also have to insert, like, I don't know, other material, like source books and short stories and stuff, but you have the comic series, Knights of the Old Republic, you have the games, KOTOR 1 and 2, and then you have the MMO. And then Knight Errant comic and novel, and then Darth Bane trilogy. It's a lot.
Yeah. Is that where you kind of stop so far? Is at the Darth Bane trilogy, the end of that?
Yeah, I stopped with the Bane trilogy. The last chapter is just titled Rule of Two, and it's just about Bane and Xana's further adventures in the trilogy. And that Xana is going to continue the Rule of Two in secret, and that's how the next book is going to start. With like breaking down all the Sith that come
Yeah.
after her until Plagueis and stuff.
That's okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good spot. I think that's fitting. Really. Yeah, I forget that there's so much like on the comic side of things. Like I'm still trying to get all that. I mean, the epic collections are great, but like I've already kind of missed out on some. So like they're pricey already, and I don't want digital, as a fan, I mean, if you have to, you have to, but like you want that physical copy.
Yeah.
If you could. So you stopped at the Darth Bane trilogy. How was it like Knight Errant? I know a lot of fans are kind of on the fence, but I'm a big fan of Knight Errant. I think it was a cool story. It's cool seeing a rogue Jedi kind of just going after the Sith. But I have yet to read the comics. Now I got it. They're coming out in Epic Collection later this year, and I got that pre-ordered already. But like, how is that? Like, what's your thoughts, honest opinion on the comic series?
On the comic series, similar to the book, I think the general setup is interesting because this era of like warring Sith Lords isn't really explored much, the
Right.
Republic Dark Age era. So that's interesting. The villain characters are fun, and there's a lot of interesting side characters in it who go through character arcs and stuff. And the general plot lines are interesting. Like the second comic doesn't feature the Sith as the main villains. It's like a Hutt who wants to expand into the Sith space and has his own plans there, and that's very interesting stuff. My two problems with it are my two problems. Kara Holt as a main character, I'm not that into.
Okay.
I just that doesn't really click with me. And the art is kind of inconsistent. Because something funny that I noticed, and it's not just an art style changing between artists, it's almost a coloring mistake. Because Kara Holtz, she's supposed to be like this, she's supposed to have like darker, brownish skin. In the first comic, she looks completely white. In the second one, she looks like an anime character, like Japanese. And then in the third one, she looks accurate. So she basically changes ethnicity throughout all three comics, which I found funny.
Yeah. The only little part of the comic I seen was that you get in the book.
That was the first issue.
Okay, yeah, it was just a few pages, and so that's all I ever really got. So I'm excited to see, but that's interesting. Yeah, I've heard that like some fans say she's kind of dull, I guess in a sense, but I don't know. I felt like she was pretty cool. It's just I love hearing everybody's different opinions. I love that.
I mean, part of it is probably because this is written by John Jackson Miller, and part of it is definitely comparing her to Zane Carrick, and Zane is just a more fun character because he's such a loser, essentially.
Yeah, see, I was going to ask you, I was going to bring it up because I've heard that name so much, Zane Carrick, and I don't have that Epic Collection. I have Volume 2. So I don't have the beginning of his story. How was that? How was going through all that? Was that fun?
That was very much fun. I really love the Knights of the Old Republic comic series. I think it's absolutely great, in my top 3, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, okay. Even as someone who doesn't, because it's supposed to be a prequel of sorts to the game about Revan and stuff, and there is some general connections and setup for events in the game, but it completely stands on its own, great world building and great comedy and character stuff. It really is excellent.
Yeah.
Like I would, on sheer entertainment value, I would put it above Tales of the Jedi. I respect Tales of the Jedi more for what it did.
Yeah.
And I really love it. So it is better in a way, but if I just want to be entertained and read something really fun and Star Wars, I'm going to read Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm going to have to just break down and get it because I've heard it's epic. John Jackson Miller did a great job.
Yeah, especially once you read the first arc. No, even the first issue, because I think it ends with the first issue. The setup for the story is so insanely good, and it immediately will catch you. And you're gonna be like, what is going on? I want to read more. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who doesn't know, but
Yeah, don't. I
who
actually
the villain of the story is, it's gonna shock you.
I got the this is the volume 2. So I got it. So I just kind of peeked at it. I don't want to read it because I mean obviously you don't want to start, how many issues or whatever it is in the middle of it, we'll say. So I got that one. Got to get volume 1. I'm excited. I heard it's fun. How's the art? The art's good?
The art is good when the main artist is doing it. There's sometimes they get different artists in, and the art style changes a lot
Okay.
when they get different artists. It's not always, it's different for sure, but I think only 1 or 2 issues look really, really bad in a way.
Okay. I want to jump back. You mentioned Tales of the Jedi. I know. I want to hear your thoughts on this. So, in my conversation with Marcel, when we were talking about it, I mentioned kind of how that volume where I read is kind of like 2 different entities, right? You got Kevin J. Anderson's, you got Tom Veitch. So the beginning of that feels like it's more fantasy sci-fi. And then when we get to Tom Veitch's writing, it's more sci-fi fantasy feel. What's your thoughts on that? And I respect both writers very much. Like I see what Tom Veitch kind of did for Star Wars as I learned about this, but I already really liked Kevin J. Anderson. But what's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. They definitely have a different feel to them. It's hard to say. I'm not the biggest fan of the 2 prequel arcs, Golden Age and Fall of the Sith Empire, but I still do enjoy them. But I think Veitch stuff, it feels more ancient and kind of, I don't want to say poetic in a way.
Yeah.
Definitely different than Anderson's work. But still, I think it works well together, especially when they start working together on Dark Lords of the Sith, and then Kevin completely takes over with SWTOR and Redemption.
Yeah.
I think that works really well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I noticed the difference kind of right away. Like how you said poetic, I like that. I felt it was like more, it was more of a story detailed kind of feel for me. Nothing was wrong with the beginning or, Kevin J's stuff because that was good. But you could just tell that shift. And then it went into that sci-fi fantasy feel for me. So I just thought that was cool. I just wanted to get your opinions on that. So writing the Kotor stuff down in the chronology has been some of the most fun, and going back and revisiting it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Do you plan to do anything different in the lines of like the arrangement of the placement in the book or even pictures? I mean, have you thought do you want to just do something a little different with this one? Now that you got one under your belt?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because with the first one, I thought it was going to be the only one. But now, what I'm looking at, essentially, I want to put this one out, and then the next one about prequel era, Clone Wars, Dark Times, and then a final one about Rebellion era, essentially. And then I want to combine them. And now my question with the setup of book 1, part 1, chapter 1, 2, 3, and so forth, it's like I want to publish them separately and then put them together in one gigantic book. So the question is, should I already set up the standalone versions of it with a to be continued, or how am I going to do it? I haven't figured out exactly how to structure it yet.
Yeah.
I did call in my current one, I did say it's book 1, Tales of the Old Republic, and then the next separate book would be Downfall of the Republic. And so I kind of wanted to, transition smoothly into one another.
Yeah. You got options for sure.
I got options
of what you could do. And I'm trying to think of, so we did, how many pages is this one roughly you think is going to be?
Roughly, in the document I have written, it's 165 pages, which means in PDF format, it will be probably 200 plus pages.
Okay. So the first one was like 300 and some, I believe.
Yeah, and then
No.
it turned out to be 400
Yeah.
in print.
And then, so you got that. So this one will probably be like, we'll say 250. Now you put these together all in one big, once you get finished after the prequel era and such, trying to think of where you're going to put them on the shelf. But that would be really cool, and then, yeah, you could maybe put something on the cover that's, kind of unique, your own creative style. And I'm going to have to get one of these signed by you, by the way, just before you take off and you're, we can go back and be like, well, I interviewed him when he first started out. So, and I got it signed right here. So we're going to have to work something out with that, because I would appreciate, I would like that. Because this is, like I said, buddy, this is you're putting a lot of work in this, and it's really good. And it's something great, especially for a guy like me or anyone else that's coming into the fandom and learning about the expanded universe. Right. I mean, there's just so much. And through this conversation, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I had no idea about that so far. I didn't know there was a mini series off of a comic run here and a short story here.
Yeah. And it's insane to think this wasn't done before, in a way, because I'm thinking of like YouTubers do it, like Star Wars YouTubers. They do like, oh, here's a breakdown of what happens in the Rebellion era, but they don't really include everything.
Yeah.
And they don't really list like the sources, like what is this story from? Like if you just say, oh, here's the Dark Trooper project, that was happening there, and you don't say, oh, this is covered in the Dark Forces video game. And like if a newcomer, he's like, oh, that sounds interesting, but I don't know where to find this story.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I appreciate that, because it's true. Like, that's a lot of work. You took the time to research it, to give it to the full extent, because yeah, anybody can be like, well, Joe Blow said it, and then there it is. So it just makes it's like, yeah. So I just want to say that again, like, it's just awesome, because it helps guys like me coming in, learning, because there's just so much. And another thing is, like, some of the stuff is hard to get. That yourself, especially being from Germany, sometimes books don't come out until months or maybe even years later.
Yeah, and sometimes never. Like the second half of Galaxy of Fear.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. Yeah, them are super hard to find. And it's funny now that the more and more people that are talking about, the expanded, Star Wars in the past, and it's like the more and more this stuff's popping up and the prices keep going up on it too, so having a chronology like this helps out a ton, and it's just great work so far. So what's the plans? Like, what do you got looking forward? When do you think this is you're gonna be, you already got it done, a rough draft, right?
Yeah, first draft, I would say.
First draft, I'm sorry. So the next step is you're going to go through it, make sure you get the final tweaks, and then send it off to have it translated or what have you?
Yeah, that's basically the plan right now. So for now, first draft is finished. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back, read through it again, insert like little mentions of stuff. Like one thing I probably should have written all of this down, but there's like little things I have to insert, like Tatooine getting destroyed by the Rakata Infinite Empire, which I set up earlier in a chapter, that the Rakata took over Tatooine, but I didn't mention they are responsible for it turning into a desert. I want to insert that. And yeah, just stuff like that I'm going to put in. And then I'm just going to send it into my guys, to translate it into English. And not that it's ready to come out. They have to translate it into English, read through it, and before even editing, they just have to check that the information is correct, especially for like the games, since I have to rely on like secondhand knowledge.
Right.
And once that's done, they can go to work editing it. And while they do that, I'm gonna continue with the next book, essentially going into the prequel era.
Okay. When you send this off, do you kind of start Like, what are you reading right now? Like, let me ask you that first.
Right now, for some reason, it wasn't a conscious decision, but 2 days ago, I decided to just start reading Darth Plagueis again. Probably because I was going to move into this era.
That's what I was going to ask you. I wanted to make sure. I was going to say, once you're kind of in the process now, we're slowly getting it taken care of. Do you start jumping in, reading, picking up for the next line of the chronologies?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reread all of it, but important stuff. And Plagueis, I mean, that's just fun. That's always fun to reread and rediscover new stuff, because I've been making notes of like connections and stuff in here, and it's insane.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
I read it not too long ago, and you're right. It's definitely a great book, amazing, and to go back and reread it, yeah. You know, when I get there eventually, I'm looking forward to getting into the new Jedi Order. That's where I want to read that, because everybody says that's great. But to go back and reread some of these, it's just like I just finished Rogue Planet and I loved it. I thought it was a fun book. It feels like a young adult novel. I don't mean to jump off on the subject here. Anyway, that's a fun book. So I'm kind of in that prequel era right now, reading through, because I'm just following along through the timeline.
And Rogue Planet is also great because it really ties into New Jedi Order,
which I've heard. Yeah. So yeah, that's great. So you're reading Darth Plagueis right now. How far along are you in it, if you don't mind me asking?
I think I have like 150 pages left, so
oh wow,
I'm close to the end.
Perfect. So the guys got this. They're translating it. Excuse me. They get back. So do they kind of tell you, hey, like maybe this part here, is that kind of how that works? Like maybe we got to switch something around.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. With the last one, it was like already translated well enough, and their job was essentially just restructuring some of the sentences to sound more naturally English.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, with like, and then a little tweak here and there with the story. Most notably, the Adumar chapter in the book, which is a little inside joke between us.
Okay, all right. Well, that's cool. Well, we'll keep that there. Yeah. So you start working on the next book. When do you think this chronology will come out? Later this year?
The Old Republic one, definitely this year. Definitely this year. That's my goal.
Okay, perfect. So I'm looking forward to it. So I was going to ask you what you got coming next that you're working on, but it sounds like you got your work structured out for a while. Like,
yeah.
This is going to take some time. I mean, we already got the post Return of the Jedi one done. It's great. But that's what I mean. People don't realize how much of the backstory, how far it goes.
And what's even more insane, Joe Bongiorno's Supernatural Encounters, when that comes out, I probably have to go back and insert stuff from it into my chronology, since he also covers like 100,000 years ago and even further. So probably gonna have to do some edits.
Yeah. It'll be good to have it in there, though, especially for the people that didn't get a chance to get their hands on a copy of this book. I was going to ask you, is there anything that you have like recently got that you're like a new book, something that you've been trying to get?
I do have one thing. The Lightsider paperback.
Look at that.
With a very incredible nice thing on the back of it, which is a quote by me, of all people.
That is insane.
Yeah, it is.
That's crazy, man. Can people go somewhere to get a copy of that, or is it already that window is already gone? I would assume
it should still be possible if you know the right people. Oh. We're gonna leave it at that.
Okay. Noah's got the connection, folks. Got to go to his channel, subscribe, like, tell him, hey, I'm looking for a golden ticket here.
Yeah, just demand I give you like links and stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So is there anything else that you're kind of working on off besides this? Is there anything that you've been kind of looking forward to?
No, so far I would say this is where all my focus is right now. Getting this book done, pretty good. So yeah, I'm just excited to start the next one. But just remembered what I first have to do with the edits to the Old Republic one. I have to write a little prologue, so to speak. Because for this one, since we start at the very beginning, I want to give like a specific setup. Like, this is the galaxy. This is like the basics you need to know. Like, how many different life forms exist, how many star systems and stuff. Just so newcomers really have an idea how the Star Wars galaxy looks like.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm going to get a lot of info from this one.
Look at that. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, the Essential Atlas.
That's
pretty
cool.
damn big book.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, look at that. And that gives you all the information of the planet, the life, the species, the whole kind of deal, and where it's located.
Pretty much, everything.
Yeah. That's impressive.
And goes up until, if I can find it. Oh yeah, includes the book stuff.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So, yeah, even the Legacy comics.
Look at that.
Good stuff.
That would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I think that's a great idea. However, you can work that out in there. Cool. Well, that's what I got for you today. I wanted to get you on here, buddy, and talk about this, get this out there, get people pumped up about it. Because the first book, in my opinion, I really enjoyed it. You know, I love talking with you. I think I mean, I know you do stuff in German, but you do some stuff on the channel, English, like you had that, how you rated all the novels that you threw a system. I thought that was fun. I watched that live stream. Folks, you got to go subscribe to Noah. He's a blast. He's fun. He's very knowledgeable. I'm just having fun talking with you. I love hearing about this stuff. I love learning, especially from guys like you that are just so kind and open and willing to share, and all the time and work you put into it, man. It's excellent. And I appreciate that very much. Is there anything else that you want to say before we kick things off here?
One final thought, like regarding writing this Old Republic portion of the book, essentially. I was surprised how short it is. We're talking like 200 plus pages.
Yeah.
Since, you know, the post-original trilogy stuff is like 400 pages. And it did make me realize, yeah, the stuff after the original trilogy, that's the most content we have. Yeah. Because I was always under the impression, Old Republic, because I didn't know much about the era other than the comics and the novels, I was like, it must be gigantic. This book will probably be 400 pages on its own. Only 200.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, because I'm thinking, this book is going to be huge too, because there's so much of it, you know, between the comics and the novels and the short stories that we mentioned. It's like, there's a lot. I wonder what the prequel era is going to feel like.
It's gonna be insane.
It's gonna be probably close with the post Return of the Jedi stuff for sure.
Yeah.
So that's it. I want to put Noah's link for his channel in the description. The subscription. I got a subscription to it, and I'm getting tickets to his new book. It's going to be signed. It's going to have a plaque. Stevie B, you're the best. Thanks a lot. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm going to put it in there. Go check him out. It's a blast. I'm excited for this. You should be excited for this. And if you like what I'm doing here, hit the like button, subscribe, tell your friends. I appreciate everyone's support. I truly mean that. This is such a blast and a fun, especially to meet folks like Noah, Marcel that we've talked about, Alex. There's so many of them to list. But anyway, it's what I got for you guys today. The Old Republic. It's coming soon. And until next time. See you soon.